And that is the background for why our organization decided we needed something for conflict management. In 2015, we had what's called a unit climate survey. Are any of you familiar with this? So every year, our military sends out some questions, and our units here are able to have people answer those questions about how they feel in their work environment. Do you trust your supervisor? Are you engaged? Do you feel motivated? How's collaboration? All these things you all were asking about. And the results for us in 2015 were not great. It came back that the number one issue that we had was there was a communication and lack of trust issue between our first line supervisors and our instructors. And as you all mentioned, that's a big concern from a manager level, from a leadership level, if our supervisors don't have trust with their employees and vice versa. So our training and development department decided we needed to do something to address that. And what we chose for that was a course called Crucial Conversations. Have any of you seen this book before, or the course? Yes, yes. What's your experience with this?
We had our group project on the same topic about conflicts, so we researched something, and one of the sources was this book.
Great.
And I like the practical part of it, that role playing. It seemed very helpful.
Wonderful. So if you have follow-up questions, you have some classmates, right, who know some things here. Now, of course, I'll be happy to answer too. That's great. You all have seen some of this before, and it's all about a practical application. It's not just let's live in the theory of it all, right? But how do we actually get people to have a more open, trusting relationship where we can have honest dialogue with each other? So what is Crucial Conversations training? Well, it teaches people how to improve dialogue, like we said, and that employee engagement. Some of you mentioned when we let conflict fester, right, that employees start to feel less engaged. Well, so then the opposite is true, right? If they feel engaged, if they feel they can openly share, it increases that engagement. Also to foster teamwork, as you all mentioned, again, collaboration, right? People being able to feel like they can trust their team members and ultimately make the best decision for the organization, right? And then to build a high-performance culture of trust and respect. There are those key words again. And of course, it's about that performance. It's not just that I feel good, but it's that I feel positive and can perform so that the organization benefits, right? And then how do we resolve individual and group disagreement? Because it's going to happen, right? So what are the tools that we need, that our organization needs to be able to resolve it when it does happen? And I put this quote here from Arthur Dobrin, who said, "There's always a way to be honest without being brutal." And that's the tension, right? We sort of feel like I can do one or the other. I can tell you what I really think, right? But it might be a little brutal, or I can just back off and not say anything, and then as you all mentioned, that might fester and build a little bit, right? So this is what the tools were that we were really after for our organization. Up to date, these are the latest numbers that we have. We have 300 people who we have trained. So this has been an organization-wide initiative. 214 instructors and non-supervisory. And they are not required to take this course. That is voluntary for our instructors. But what happened is that as people took it, they said, yeah, you know what? These are tools I really need. I really need to know, how do I talk to my supervisor without just shutting down and saying, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, right? How do I get that trust back in a team when we're not getting along? We have 86 of our supervisory level folks who have taken the course, and they are required to take it. The organization decided this is important enough that our supervisors, as a leader, need to have this key competency to be able to have tools to engage with their employees. Because like most of you, right? We start out as instructors. We don't have those skills. We get promoted up. Now I'm a supervisor, but I haven't necessarily been trained as a supervisor, right? So we need to help our supervisors, our managers who have promoted up, gain these tools. That was DLI's conclusion, and so this is what we have done. You can see here from our commanders section, the 332nd is our instructor cadre. So it's mostly hit for our instructors, but a lot of our support staff and even some of our military have participated. So what's the result been? Well, it's working. We've gotten feedback from our supervisors, instructors, staff, and military who have said, yes, this really is helping us accomplish our goals. We're not 100% there yet. We're still continuing follow-up, and as you mentioned, these practical role plays. How do we get people in a room and talk about the conflicts that we've had and engage with each other and practice working through these conflicts so that we can all perform better, right? So that's what we're currently working on. But the result has been this culture of open dialogue, honest communication. It really does affect our ability to accomplish the mission. Without an environment where people can engage in a respectful way, where they can trust each other, it's really hard to get that mission done, right? So, what is the crucial conversation? This whole book, this whole training is called Crucial Conversations. What makes it crucial? Well, it's when a discussion between two or more people has high stakes. What do we mean by high stakes?
Serious consequences.
Yes. Something is on the line. So when I go in and engage with my manager, right, that's pretty high stakes. I don't want to mess up that relationship. Right? When opinions vary, which happens all the time, right? Difference of opinion, and emotions run strong. There's something that's personal there or something that you feel invested in. You feel strongly about it. So what happens during a crucial conversation? Well, think about the last time that you felt a little bit challenged, right? Or someone disagreed with you, or someone was pushing back in a situation where you were really invested in something. What is our natural tendency? How do we respond?
Counterattack sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes a defensive position.
Okay. So we can be offense or defense there, I like the way you said that. Yeah. So sometimes we come out even stronger, right? I am gonna win, right? I'm gonna win this conversation right now. Yeah. Any of you go the other way where you go, okay, I'm out. You just do what you want to do. I'm gonna just let you have your way, right?
Easier.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just, let's avoid the stress and conflict, right? But what happens when we back out and then we're still inside thinking through all these things?
Go to the gym and punch some drugs. Go to the gym.
You have more stress, mate.
Yeah.
You feel that you are angry. You missed the chance to say what you have in front of your boss, for example.
Yeah.
So come tomorrow morning and tell him everything in your heart in order just to feel free, to feel happy, to
Yeah.
release stress.
I like that. There's
Yeah.
always another chance, isn't there?
Sure.
Yeah, just because we miss it the first time. And that's our goal too with learning these skills, is that it's not a one and done. We're not going to handle it perfectly the right time, but I need to know, how do I go to my boss, like you said, the next morning and tell my boss what I'm really thinking without exploding everywhere, right? Or without withholding things that are maybe really important for my boss to know, right? So when we're caught up in these crucial conversations, it's difficult to see what's going on and why. We get stressed and we end up doing the opposite of what works. This is human, right? We all do this at times. And so we want to identify our style under stress to be able to just raise awareness, right? And say, hey, you know what? I might be going on the offensive right now, and that might not be the best tool. Or I might be retreating right now, And maybe that's not the best tool. And these are separated out into two main categories, silence and violence. Okay? This is exactly what we were talking about earlier, that fight or flight response that we have when things start to get tense, right? Where we have different opinions, high stakes, right? Strong emotions. We either can start to go to silence. That doesn't necessarily mean we literally go to silence and stop talking, but it means somehow we start to withdraw what we really think, right? We don't share what we really mean. So they gave you several different types of silence here. One is masking. Is anyone familiar with masking? Or have a guess as to what that might be?
Hiding your true feelings.
Exactly. Put that mask on, right? So maybe I'm still talking and sharing something, but I'm hiding my true feelings. This for me is one that I definitely tend towards with my supervisors, right? So I remember I was working on a course, which we have here called PME Prep. It's a really intense course, yes, in the back, teachers who have taught it. These students are going off to the Naval War College, Army War College, Command and General Staff College. They're very sharp, high-level students who are writing research papers, doing presentations, giving briefings. It's quite intense, as 8 weeks go, for the instructor as well, who's grading all of this work, giving feedback. And so I was in the middle of this course, you know, when everything was ramping up. And my supervisor came to me and said, "Oh, Kristen, I have a great opportunity for you. I would like you to organize a training for our new teachers who are teaching Baer. And we're going to do that the week after next." Okay, will I have any time off schedule to do that? No, while you're teaching, I would like you to organize this, okay? So, of course, in my mind, I'm thinking this is going to be a disaster, right? It's going to be so stressful. The course I'm teaching is already really intense. And I am going to have to scramble to try to organize this training while I'm still teaching this class. But, of course, what I said to my supervisor was, "Okay, yes, ma'am, thank you for the opportunity," right? This is silence. That is an example of silence. Because really, my supervisor needs to know what is going on to make the best decision. Otherwise, what ends up happening is we get a course where the instructor is not fully engaged because they're working on a training where they're also not fully engaged, right? And now performance is affected. So that's an example of silence, right? Masking, avoiding completely sometimes, or withdrawing, just backing out, right? So some of you maybe had a higher score in this column. That shows your tendency to go maybe that way in the situation or relationship you were thinking of. Violence, this does not mean, again, literal violence where I'm, fighting, hitting, no.
Can be sometimes.
Maybe.
You reach this.
That's right, isn't it? Because often when we first move to silence and stuff everything down,
Or shouting sometimes.
yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about. That would be a kind of violence, shouting, right? Controlling, right? And as supervisors and managers, we can do that a lot, right? I have the power, so at the end of the day, I can just say, "You're going to do this," right? And sometimes we have to do that. But sometimes maybe there's some conversation that needs to happen before I use my authority to say, "We're going to do it this way." Okay? Same with labeling, right? "Oh, well, that person, he is such a so-and-so, right? He's a terrible performer. He's just an angry guy. She never wants to participate." These are the labels that we put on people, which again cause us to shut down and not engage with employees, right? Or attacking, that's what you're... So in my situation, when I was working on this PME prep course and this orientation, and I said, "Yes, ma'am," and had my smile and went back and started working, guess what happened? Stress. stress, stress, stress. Now I'm trying to navigate all the details. I'm running around, right? I'm staying late after my duty hours to try to get everything done. And my chief, who's above my supervisor, I see in the hallway one day, and he says, well, how's everything going? And I say, I am so stressed out. This is so difficult to manage both these products. Kaboom, right? That was violence at that point. And that's often what happens when we go to silence. It eventually comes out.
Explode.
Exactly. So how does it help us as leaders to know what our tendencies are? What do you think?
Controlling.
Sorry?
Being able to control actually our actions on either side, by the way.
Yeah.
So it's not always good to shy away, but at the same time, if you have some kind of both-headed reactions for situations, keeping in mind these factors, you may just keep control over yourself and be a little bit more moderate with your voice, with your manners, but still being direct with the situation.
Yeah, that's great. It really raises our awareness to allow ourselves to engage and say, you know, maybe I'm going to silence or violence right now, and there might be another option for me. Good. Other thoughts? Could this be helpful to you to know this information about yourself?
Sometimes we don't realize we are doing this, that we are being rude or aggressive in certain manner. So with this survey, we take a little bit of conscious of ourselves. I'm being so direct, I'm being so offensive, I'm being a little bit sarcastic.
That's it, because when we're in those moments, those stressful moments, right, we all cannot be our best selves, even if that's not how we would normally react or how we want to react, right? We go into these modes under stress. Right? That's why it's style under stress. And so it gives us something to aim at, to work on. Other thoughts, responses to this?
To have a remedial plan for yourself, and to be in the middle, not to be silenced, not to be violent as well. To be in the middle.
That's it. That's, I put at the end of this presentation a little hashtag, which I'll show you all, but it's a hashtag stay curious, right? For me, that's been one of the most impactful things from this training is stay curious, right? When I want to respond and we have to do it this way, this is what we need to do, or okay, I'm not going to talk, I try to engage, and that's my tool. I like that you said that, right? My tool, my remedial plan there is to say, stay curious. Let me ask a question, right? Let me find out if there's another point of view. Maybe I missed something, right? To just stay in the conversation with the employees instead of moving one way or another. I want to share a story with you about being on the receiving end of someone who was using these skills with me as my manager, which made a large impact on me. And I'm telling you, these tools for me have really been, honestly, the most impactful, not only at work, but personally. I've used these a lot at home with my family because they're the same tools, right, when we're under stress. And so I've saw this first in a manager that I had here who was so wonderful. I went into her and I was working as a Crucial Conversations trainer, and we have other trainers in the organization, and those trainers are instructors, so they're in the classroom all day long, and then after class they'll come and train other people. They'll do a book club, a workshop, help engage people with these skills. And they're doing that on their own time. And typically at DLI, when people do something extra on their own, they're given some credit for training. And we say, we're going to award you an hour of training credit because you're doing this training. But my boss decided that these people would not receive that hour of training because it's part of their job as trainers that they should be training. Said, yes, but they're in the classroom all day, right? They're teaching and they're coming and doing this on their own. I really wanted that credit for them. So I went in to talk to her about this because it was very important to me to take care of our people and reward them for the extra work that they're doing. So I went to my boss and I said, I really want to give them this credit. I think it's so important. I explained all my reasons, and she said, no, we're not going to do that because it's part of their job. Anything that's considered part of your job, you don't get that training credit, and I don't want to change that rule that we have. And so what happened was I started to dig in, right? I'm like, oh no, I really have to convince her that we need to do this because it's so important to me. Violence, right? In case you are tracking here, right? So I started digging in, saying, but we have to do it. This is why it's so important. We need to give them this credit. I'm worried about them, that their motivation is going to go down. And she stopped, right? Which is so wonderful. She stayed curious. And instead of just using her power to say, no, we're not doing that, she asked me a question. She said, Kristen, why is this so important to you? Oh, that's all it took. One little question. It helped me relax. Now I feel like my boss is listening to me, right? And now I feel engaged. I said, well, you know, it's important to me because I've heard them talking, our trainers, that they feel overworked. They feel really stressed. And I'm worried if we don't reward them for their work, they're going to start to lose motivation, right? She said, you know, is there another way that we could reward them other than giving them this credit? Well, I don't know, maybe there is, right? Maybe there's more than one solution. She said, what if we could take them out of the classroom for an hour before they go do the training so they have time to prepare? Okay, great. Wow, that sounds great. It's not rocket science, right? She didn't do anything advanced and complex, but what she did is she stopped, she asked a question, she showed that what I had to say was really important to her. She didn't have to do that. She was my manager. She could have just said, this is the rule, this is what we're going to do, that's it, right? But the way that I walked away from that conversation was I felt listened to, I felt motivated, I felt engaged, I felt like I could come to her with new ideas, right? And so that's why I'm sharing this with you all today, because these kinds of tools for managers to be able to stop, and instead of going to silence or violence, right, to engage and ask a question, that can change how your employees are interacting with you and responding to you. I just wanted to end with this little overview of some of the different topics that are in this book, and to give you a picture of some of the tools that are available. We do have these books in the library. Again, I'm not here to sell this program in particular, but hopefully to encourage you as leaders to think about what are the tools that you have in your toolbox for engaging with your employees, for helping them navigate conflict, right? So some of the things that we talk about in the course are getting unstuck. The very first thing is, where am I stuck? Where is the issue? What's really holding me back from getting the results that I want? Where's the tension or the stress or the problem? Okay. Once I do that, I'm going to start with myself and say, what do I really want here? What's important to me? Again, lots of question asking, you'll notice. That's the theme, right? What is it that I really want to get out of this situation? Often in the moment, I want to win, right? Or I want to run away. But if we can think about what do I want in the long term, right? For my relationships with my people, for the organization. We talk about mastering our stories. How do I make sure that I'm not just telling myself, like those labels we talked about earlier, oh, this person is just a terrible person, right? How do I check that I'm not labeling? We talk about how to state our paths. How do we engage with our employees and say to them, hey, you know what? I've noticed that you've come in late 3 times this week, and I'm starting to wonder if there's something going on. Could you help me understand what's going on? Right? How do I address an issue with an employee in a way that they can receive and feel like they can engage without just being slapped on the hand, right? You came in late, right? We talk about also how do we learn to look for signs when people are starting to go to silence or violence. I bet you all can come up with some of them. What do you think? What are some signs you think when people start to go to silence? What might we see in our employees if they're going to silence?
Avoiding, not participating, ignoring things, being in not a good mood sometimes.
Absolutely. Other thoughts? Silence?
Sleep.
How about violence? That one's a little easier to spot. What happens when someone goes to violence?
It can be offensive, and the counterpart can become defensive. And
Yeah.
that definitely will help the environment. And being silent is just you are shying away, and problem wouldn't be ever solved. And as I mentioned in the beginning, it can grow over time. That's definitely not a solving tool.
That's it. And so that's our tool is we want to be able to recognize it before it grows, just like you said. That's it. How do I notice that, this person's starting to raise their voice or get a little animated, right? Or the shouting, as you mentioned, is coming. Or maybe they're saying, oh yes, everything's fine, but their face looks really stressed out. And then how do we make it safe for them to share, right? Just invite them to share. And the final thing is move to action. How do I actually implement these tools and talk with my employees about who's doing what when so that we can come to an agreement together?
But I would like to know more about, if you could speak more about the decision that was made to adopt Crucial Conversations in the first place. Not necessarily about the reason, but how that decision was taken. Who was responsible for making that decision? Because I think maybe somebody might say, well, we've got problems, but we can't deal with that. Instructors, that's not we don't have the power. So maybe if you could talk a little bit about, do you know anything about the
Yeah, so
history of that?
I know for sure it was the climate survey was the impetus. But there was someone here previously, she has since retired and gone off to other things, but she had gone to a Crucial Conversations training years and years ago. And she had actually done some of the other trainings that this company offers. I think I brought one. They have another one called Crucial Accountability. How do we hold our employees accountable? They have one called Influencer. So she had done several of these trainings. And when this unit climate survey came up, I think she is the one who made a proposal to our training and development department and said, hey, I think this would be really great to do organizationally.
So it was from
For
a first-line supervisor working directly with your department?
Yes,
With
exactly.
professional development?
With
Okay.
professional development.
Right,
Yes,
okay.
which we're very fortunate to have that. I know a lot of organizations don't have just professional development. But I would encourage you all, I mean, you two mentioned you already worked on a project where you've seen some of these tools, and that's the key takeaway, I think, from all of this is that often we get focused on the tasks of the job, but really as managers and supervisors, our primary task is our people, right? And so we have to find some tools, whether it's these tools or other tools that you already know or have. We have to have those tools, I think, to engage. So they say, if you use these skills exactly the way we tell you to, and the other person doesn't want to dialogue, you won't get to dialogue, right? If the other person really won't engage. However, and this is however, if you persist over time, refusing to take offense, making your motive genuine, showing respect, and constantly searching for mutual purpose, then the other person will almost always join you in dialogue. And I think the point here is that sometimes it doesn't happen, and it doesn't happen right away. And I've had that experience where I went in to talk with someone and I was using tools left and right, and it still sort of blew up. But I went back and tried again and tried again. And I think this, if I can share sort of from a personal note, this has especially been true for me with my family. Nothing is more difficult than family, right? And so I've had chances to share and use these skills with some of my family members. It's not great, it's not perfect, but I'm making little progress. You know what I mean? And so I think it's the same at work with our employees. We may not get to a perfect working relationship, but I think those small progresses can help. There may be some situations where they don't, and where you just go, we have to take a different path for this situation. But I think by and large, sort of remaining curious, oh yeah, let me just put my little hashtag, right? This staying curious so that when I engage with that person who I've had 20 bad conversations with, I can say, this is a new conversation, right? Each time, this is a new conversation. So it's really a lot about our own personal mindset. Let me engage in this conversation right now and try to stay curious here.